Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO as we broadcast from the Culligan Water Studios. Better water, pure and simple. It is election season. And joining me in studio today, the latest candidate to toss his hat into the ring now for Lubbock County Judge, another candidate for Lubbock County Judge, Curtis Parrish.
Good morning.
Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's good to be here in the spacious Culligan Water Studio.
Yeah, well, awesome we're glad to have you in here and to talk about your campaign. The official announcement was yesterday. How'd that go?
Oh, it was amazing. We were just very honored and blessed. We had a lot of folks come out to support. To hear the announcement, it was great having the family and friends and supporters out there. It was a really wonderful event, and we're just really anxious to kind of get the campaign now kicked off as we get ready to run for Lubbock County Judge. The election is the March primary, so we're running obviously in the Republican primary election, and that election will be March the 6th. But we do always remind people that early voting for that will begin February the 20th.
Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, the campaign or the election days actually begin February 20th. So we'll be working our campaign toward getting everything ready to go and getting folks to come out to vote on February 20th.
Well, I had some people who were, asking me because we've had candidates announced for a lot of different offices.
Sure.
This seems early, and it's really not because, as you know, with Thanksgiving around the corner, no one's going to be thinking about politics. No. Then Christmas, and then, like you said, early voting. It begins right after, soon after the new year. So, with that, I know you have a lot of campaigning to do. Tell folks though who maybe they've heard you before in different places, but maybe they don't know you too well. Tell folks a little bit about yourself.
Well, my family are all from Lubbock and West Texas. Now, my dad, I was born in the military. My dad was in the military, and after he left the military, he became a preacher. And so we lived all over. But my mom and dad and my grandparents are all from Lubbock, West Texas area. So Lubbock and West Texas has always been home. No matter where we lived, anywhere in the world where we lived, Lubbock was always home. And even growing up, I always knew that wherever we lived, Lubbock still was always home. And my grandparents actually lived 3 blocks from each other right here in Lubbock. And it was a wonderful time to grow up and to come to Lubbock and see all my family and just be a part of this community. I always tell people I'm a 5th generation West Texan. And so I'm a Flatlander by DNA, and so I love Lubbock. And I actually moved myself to Lubbock right after I graduated from high school to go to Lubbock Christian University. Enjoyed my time there. Finished my undergraduate work at Texas Tech. And got a degree in political science, and then went to law school after I got my undergraduate degree, and have been practicing law. Now that's kind of the back end of my resume, but in between, I spent 16 years as assistant news director, chief photographer over at Channel 28. Yeah. Worked at Channel 11 as the assistant news director there for about a year. Left news business in 1996, and that was when, if you remember the time in Lubbock, we had John Monfort, who was the state senator, became the chancellor of Texas Tech. And that left an open seat. Robert Duncan, who was the state representative, ran in that special election. And I left the news business at that time to go work for him. After the election, I went with him to Austin as his legislative aide. Worked in Austin for 2 different sessions. The last session I worked was in 2001 over on the House side. I was a committee clerk for the Juvenile Justice and Family Issues Committee. So my legislative experience is both in the Senate and in the House of Representatives. And then following that, moved the family back to Lubbock to go to law school.
Yeah.
And so been practicing here in town. I've got a private practice where I do probates, I do guardianships, estate planning. My partner and I, Robert Barnhill, he's a tax attorney, so we kind of take care of the taxing in part of it and also the trust management part of it as well. And then because of that, because of my involvement not only in the political realm, but also in the legal realm, I've been always very interested, obviously, in running for office. And so it's this opportunity to be the next Lubbock County Judge presented itself. Tom Head has indicated he's not going to run for re-election. He's been doing it now almost 20 years and has served very admirably for Lubbock County. And so the opportunity then to step in has now presented itself, and we're going to give it a shot.
What was it that besides him indicating that he wasn't going to run, what else maybe led you to wanting to toss your hat into the ring in this one? Because this is going to be an interesting election.
It will be. It will be very interesting, and I think it's my education and my experience and the knowledge that I have about Lubbock County, how Lubbock County runs. When I was working for Senator Robert Duncan, one of my primary jobs was also working with all the counties of West Texas as well in the 28th Senatorial District. So really getting a good grasp of how county government works, which I think is probably our best form of government out there. Believe it or not, we feel so very distant from our federal government and our state government. That's way down there in Austin, but our county government. This is the part of government where we're really interacting directly with people, probably even more so than even the city hall. City hall sometimes feels very distant, but the county government, to me, is that more that purest, that truest form of government. And working with counties all over West Texas in my law practice, I also did a lot of redistricting work, and you do have to do that every 10 years. Every governmental entity has to do that. And so working with county governments and really understanding the role and the function of county governments. Also with my law practice, understanding the role of a county judge. And county judges have a very unique role in government. They're part administrative and part judicial. The administrative part is they act as just one of the members of the Commissioner's Court, one of the 5 members of the Commissioner's Court. So they oversee the administrative duties of the county. And then there's the judicial part. The county judge has original jurisdiction over probates, guardianships, mental incompetency cases. And this has been my primary practice as an attorney. So for me, the Lubbock County Judge is a natural fit, and I think it makes me very uniquely qualified to be the county judge.
When we come back, we'll get into some of the issues facing the county, some issues they've faced in the past. Then we'll also talk about that relationship between the county and the residents, what can be improved on. I'm sure there are some things that you feel can be improved on there. We'll talk about that and much more. Curtis Parrish running for Lubbock County Judge. More when we come back here on KFYO. Chad Hasty Show News Talk, 95.1 FM, 790 AM, KFYO. In studio, Curtis Parrish, running for Lubbock County Judge. And let's talk real quick about the, you had brought up, the form of government, county government being close to the people. Do you think people feel that way when talking about, gotten to the Commissioner's Court and county government? Because it's one of those, as you know, city councils covered all the time. People hear a lot about the city council. They hear a lot about the legislature. They hear a lot about the federal government. You don't hear a lot about the county government and what they're up to until about budget season when that rolls around. So does there need to be an improvement there? And if so, how, as county judge, would you improve that relationship or that, openness?
Well, and Chad, I don't think that's such a bad thing. I mean, and I'm not saying out of sight, out of mind is a good thing, but that ought to really clue you in that county government works. When you talked about hearing a lot about City Hall and hearing a lot about the state, it's usually about what they're doing wrong,
right,
and how they're hurting us, and we don't hear that from the county government. And this is what. And of course the federal government too. You hear all the negative things coming out of the federal government and out of the state and out of the city, but you rarely hear negative things coming out of the county government, and that's because county government works. And so that you don't hear about it, except maybe in budget time when people are looking to see what their ad valorem tax is going to be for the next year. Other than that, you rarely hear things that are going on in the county, either good or bad. Now, as county judge, what I want to be is more of the voice for Lubbock County. Because I do think we have a great story to tell, and I do think that there are some great things out there that Lubbock County is doing, and maybe it does fly under the radar, and maybe that's for the best. But I do think that we see more and more. We see Washington, D.C., we see Austin really putting unfunded mandates onto counties, especially. And so I want to make sure that Lubbock County has a very strong voice. And as county judge, I think that's a very natural role for me, to be able to work with our state representatives and our state senator and our U.S. representatives, and to let them know, to tell the story of Lubbock County and to tell the story about how we are great in natural resources like food and fiber and fuel, and to really promote this idea that Lubbock County is doing things right, that we are one quick example, and I ran into this a lot when I was working with Senator Robert Duncan. We would have senators propose legislation, for instance, from Houston, Harris County, and they would propose a piece of legislation that would probably work for Harris County but would be devastating for Lubbock County and some of our other smaller counties in West Texas. And so you need to have somebody really looking over their shoulder and saying, yeah, that may be good for Houston, and that may be good for Austin or San Antonio or Dallas, but it is devastating for us out here. And so we really need somebody. We need a good, strong voice representing Lubbock County to be able to work with our state representatives, state senator, U.S. representatives, to let them know that, hey, Lubbock County, we are unique. We have a lot of differences within our communities, but we are very unique in that we sit in the middle of the largest cotton patch in the United States. We provide fuel and food to a multitude of Americans. So that story needs to be told, and that story needs to be protected as well. And so I want to be that voice.
One of the issues that came up during this past legislative session that a lot of counties weighed in on, you had 2 county commissioners here weigh in on it, and even members of the city council who are weighing in. In fact, one of your opponents in this race who weighed in on this, who they were going to put basically restrict the tax rate on the legislative side to where would have kicked over to an election if you wanted to go above a certain amount. And of course, that was never passed.
Yeah, currently, and for the next 2 years, it'll be 9% unless the legislature comes back and revisits that.
Right.
And there were proposals to lower that cap rate to either 5% or 4%.
Right.
And what that just means is that what would kick in an election, what would kick in a referendum to the citizens to approve a tax hike above that.
How did you feel about that? And if you were county judge and they came to you and said, hey, here's what we're thinking about doing, we want to, if it kicks over a 5% tax increase, then hey, it's going to go to the voters. How would you feel about that?
Well, I would be absolutely against some of that, and let me tell you why I was against it. First of all, counties, especially Lubbock County, needs to have a little bit of that flexibility. When you're talking about this difference between a 9% and say a 4% tax increase, and whether that would trigger a referendum election, what you're talking about is some bad problems that happen in other parts of our state, where you have bad governments. And I do believe that 9% versus 5% or 4% does put the local government into check. But what happens is, and what we're seeing in West Texas is, we're seeing massive amounts of regulations coming in from Austin and from Washington, D.C., and putting that burden on the local taxpayers to cover that. So I would say to them, yeah, we'll keep the tax cap where you have it, but you need to stop with these unfunded mandates, because those burdens are what's causing these local entities to say, look, we have got to cover this. I mean, look at healthcare insurance alone. That burden to cover healthcare insurance went to the states. The states just transferred it to the local entities. I know the city of Lubbock's been struggling with their health insurance. The county as well, struggling to maintain the regulations given to us by the federal government and the state government. And so forcing us to cut services in other areas just to fund the mandates that are coming from Austin and from Washington. So if they want to stop doing that, yeah, we'll abide by their cap rate. But as long as they're continually shoving unfunded mandates at us, we've got to have a way to handle that. And that cap rate that was in such a hotted debate during the legislative session was really more for emergency services. I mean, you look at what's going on along the Gulf Coast. Those counties along the Gulf Coast are really hurting right now. And they have to have the ability to manage those crisis situations. And as long as the state tells them, no, you can't manage that, you're on your own, they're stuck. There's nothing that they can do to take care of their own citizens. So I think you need to start looking at laws that are coming in from Austin and coming in from Washington more in line of what's best for our county. And so I would leave it the way it is. If you want to provide real property tax relief, get Austin and Washington off our backs, and we can make that happen.
Let's talk about another controversial issue that always pops. Well, it seems to always pop up with county commissioners: pay increases when they vote themselves pay increases. What do you think about that issue? Would you vote for a pay increase if next year or 2 years from now, if they say, hey, we want to go ahead and vote on this again?
I have a very simple solution to that. In fact, what you don't realize, and what maybe a lot of people don't realize, is that the county commissioners are the only entity of government that can vote themselves a pay raise. Do you know that?
Pretty good job.
From school board, which they don't get paid anything, all the way to even Congress. There was a constitutional amendment passed that Congress can't even vote themselves a pay raise. If they do vote for a pay raise, and this is a constitutional amendment, if they do vote a pay raise, it only takes effect for the next Congress, meaning that those representatives have to sit for an election. And if the voters want to send them back to Washington, then they can get the benefit of that pay raise. And I would say we would do the same thing here in Lubbock County. Pay raises are a necessity. We've got rising costs, and what cost something 30 years ago cost a lot more today. We know that. So I would say that, yes, you can vote yourself a pay raise, but it would only take effect after your next election. And then let the voters decide whether they want to put you into office to get the benefit of that pay raise. But I would say for that term that you're in office, you get the salary that you're elected for, and you keep that salary that entire term. And if they want to re-up you, if they want to re-elect you, if they want to give you an extension on your job, whatever, then you get the benefit of that raise. From
the people that have talked to you already about this, about your campaign and about the run, what are people saying is one of the most pressing issues on the countywide level that, as county judge, you can help do something about?
Well, one of the things I know that people are very concerned about, that I hear a lot about, is public safety. People want to feel safe and secure in their homes. And it doesn't matter where you live. And this is universal. It doesn't matter if you live in one of our small towns like New Deal or whether you live in the urban area of Lubbock. You want to feel safe and secure in your homes. And so I think one of the prime jobs, especially that Lubbock County can do, is fund those folks that are making us and helping us to feel safe and secure. Our volunteer fire departments who work our rural county areas are absolutely vital and necessary to help us feel safe and secure. Our sheriff's department, our juvenile justice folks. And so I want to make sure that those folks have all the needs they have, all that they're adequately funded, that they're adequately trained, and they have the adequate equipment necessary to keep us safe and secure.
Curtis Parrish, running for Lubbock County Judge. How can people find out more about yourself?
Well, we have a Facebook page, Curtis Parrish for County Judge, Facebook page. We'll have a website up and running here very shortly. And we appreciate your support, and we want to thank you for helping us and letting us be the voice for Lubbock County.
All right, Curtis, we'll have you back on the show as the campaign really gets going. Thanks for stopping in.